my next suggestion, when you start watching videos, and what I'll try to do is give you a list as well. I can give you a bunch here on the video, but just people to watch. And so when you first start, my suggestion, and maybe this is completely wrong, but what I would like to see at least my students do when they're two stripes, like a two-stripe white belt and below, somebody that has less than 50, 60 classes, I would say predominantly watch early 2000s or 1990s Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu matches if you can. So in my opinion, Comprido or Rodrigo Medeiros, Saulo Ribeiro, Shanji Ribeiro, even like back then, and even still, his style is really, he's got a really, while it's really basic, it's very, I shouldn't say while it's really fundamental, it's still really advanced. But just trying to find guys like that. Roger Gracie is another really good example. Jacare, things like that, of guys that have really, really good fundamental jiu-jitsu. In the last 5 years, it started to really become a thing where there's worm guard, there's deep half, there's 50-50, there's all these, and those are great guards, and I have no problem with them. But I think that folks, when they first start, that try to watch those, get fixated on that particular position before they learn, very basic stuff. And what happens, in my opinion, seeing this in competition, is guys will get very specific on those particular techniques, those particular things, and then once they go to a competition and something happens outside of that scope, they're kind of lost. So by all means, once you've been doing classes, 50, 60 classes, or maybe you're above a two-stripe white belt, start learning some of those things and identifying some of those. But in my opinion, you should certainly learn from those guys, like I said, Roger Gracie, Saulo Barros, Gustavo Nantes, Robson Moura. Robson Moura gets a little, the cross-guard stuff gets a little advanced, but still, a lot of those things, Roberto Travins is another one. Trying to think, there's tons of them out there, but I'll try to give you a list of guys. And like I said, that's not a knock on those guys at all. I think the beauty in their jiu-jitsu is that it's very fundamental, it's very simplistic, but while at the same time it's very simplistic, it's very advanced. They've had time to completely refine those advanced techniques rather than just throwing in a brand new technique. And again, it's not to say anything against the new guys. Like I said, all that stuff is very innovative, and I think it's going to be very interesting over the next few years with the jiu-jitsu being on YouTube all the time and people being able to see techniques now that the things are advancing so quickly. It's kind of crazy because up until 2005 when YouTube came about, unless you were seeing moves from seminars, or maybe you were going to, looking in magazines, things like that, you weren't introduced to all these crazy positions until, really this comes along where you can actually start watching matches from, all along or all across the country and all across the world, 24 hours later or even less, or watch them live. So I think that's great, but at the same time, I feel like people need to have a very basic game in the beginning, just because conceptually, in my opinion, it's a little bit easier to understand than if I was to write, after the 20th class, say, okay, reverse De La Riva, here you go, we're going to go kiss of the dragon to the back kind of thing.